It seems like a record gets broken every single night in the game. However, some records are not that great to have, especially if they tend to make the players embarrassed. The NBA, a league with a lengthy history of dishonorable and embarrassing records, has the following worst records ever recorded. James Harden 2017-2018, 2018-2019, and Damon Stoudamire 2004-2005 both had 16 missed three-point attempts in a single game. These days, everybody who keeps up with the NBA is aware that James Harden's statistics are not particularly shocking. The Rockets were attempting to shoot threes each time they went down the floor and attempted to shoot as many threes as they could in that single game. Harden frequently relied on three-point shooting, so it is understandable that he managed to miss a staggering 16 threes in a single game over the course of 2 seasons. This didn't look as good for Damon Stoudamire because he was a small guard without Harden's offensive effect. His coach's eyebrows and that of others around him were undoubtedly raised by his 16 three-point misses. And see who's next on this list: Karl Malone, with 332 technical fouls in his career, which is the most in the history of the NBA. Karl Malone has the most technical fouls in a career, while Rashid holds the record for technical fouls in a season. Over the course of his career, he managed to receive an astounding 332 technical fouls, which may not come as a surprise given the mailman's reputation as a very competitive player. Malone won this rather unimportant award despite defeating famous talker Charles Barkley, who had 329 career speeches, but Malone will likely hold the record for the rest of time because few players speak as much as Malone did. A basketball player who does this often would most likely be dropped for matches, and this will greatly impact his career. Andre Drummond, during the 2015-2016 season, missed 23 free throws in a single game, which to this day is yet to be broken. He missed 23 free shots in one game. This is quite amazing. Drummond has struggled to shoot 50% from the line throughout his career, so nobody expected him to be a good free throw shooter, but missing 23 was unacceptable. Drummond, surprisingly, still contributed to the Detroit Pistons' victory over the Houston Rockets, despite having no rhythm in that particular game and missing 23 free throws. The hack at Drummond was ineffective for the Rockets, but it was unquestionably successful for the history books. Missing free throws, really? I bet such a player will definitely be dropped because in crucial times, you do not want to be missing free throws. You need the entire points. Also, there is Jason Kidd, 2000 to 2001. Jason Kidd had the most turnovers in a game with 14. It's unlikely that Jason Kidd, one of the greatest pure playmakers in NBA history, is bothered by this statistic. It is expected for someone who handled the ball as frequently as he did to make a lot of mistakes. On November 17, 2000, while playing for the Suns, he committed 14 turnovers in a game against the Knicks. No player has ever been able to surpass Jason Kidd's turnover record, despite the fact that we have witnessed many ball-dominant players cough up the ball numerous times. Another record is the most missed field goals in a game. Joe Fulks, 1947 to 1988. 41 missed field goals. Fulks historically missed a staggering 41 shots out of a total of 55 attempts. This is likely to be a statistic that will never be repeated. Fulks was actually in the Hall of Fame thanks to his first 3 seasons of his career, during which he averaged 23.2, 22.1, and 26.0 points per game, respectively. At the time, this appeared typical. However, missing 41 shots in a single game was truly incredible, especially considering that he only attempted 55 shots. Joe Fulks played for the Philadelphia Warriors at the time. Even though Fulks is a Hall of Famer, this record won't be surpassed anytime soon, and even if it is, the player in question won't likely have a job the following year. We also have Ben Wallace, who had a 41.4% free throw rate, has the worst FT percentage in NBA history. Ben Wallace was well known for his defensive abilities. His attacking game was essentially non-existent. He was known to occasionally miss miss layup attempts and was unable to shoot from anywhere on the court. Wallace makes a strong case for being the greatest rim defender of all time and is a candidate for the Hall of Fame. It is genuinely astonishing how someone could be so bad on offense yet dominate. His free throw shooting, though, was terrible, even poorer than Wilt Chamberlain and Shaquille O'Neal. Yes, Shaq was one of the best paint presences in NBA history. He had no trouble posting up on any player in the league. His signature maneuver was pinning a player to the ground before whirling around and slamming it down on their heads, yet he hardly ever made 2 consecutive free shots. This just shows that even the great have their own flaws. They just find a way to live with them. Wallace could hardly be relied upon to make any free throws, as his shooting percentage of less than 50% was very embarrassing. Another notably embarrassing record is that of the Chicago Bulls, the worst field goal percentage in a game, team, and lowest score, 23.4%, 1998-1999. We've been talking about individuals' worst records. This one is a record made by a team. The Chicago Bulls scored 49 points in 1998-1999. The Minneapolis Lakers were defeated 19-18 by the Fort Wayne Pistons in 1950, in the game with the lowest score of all time. But since that was a very long time ago, we're switching this one's parameters to the three-point line era, 1979-80 onwards. The Bulls were the team that messed up the most during that time span, scoring a record-low 49 points in a 33-point loss to the Heat in their first season after Michael Jordan permanently left Chicago. On that particular night, the Bulls had a field goal percentage of just 23.4%, while shooting 18-77 from the field, including 0-9 from 3. A few years later, the Spurs actually came awfully close to breaking that mark against Toronto in February 2002, when they shot an equally dismal 23.9%. Amazingly, that was still enough to defeat the Raptors, who were also having a terrible time shooting 33% and forced overtime. In the end, Toronto prevailed by 6 points, 80-74, after 53 minutes of dreadful basketball. Also, John Mankin had a 27.2 field goal percentage, the worst in the history of the NBA. There probably won't ever be a field goal shooter with a worse percentage than John Mankin. Although scoring under 30% is highly terrible, that is what people will remember this athlete for. Mankin, a center who stands 6'8" tall and has a career average of 5.8 points per game, is undoubtedly one of the players most likely to be forgotten. Unfortunately for him, a center in the NBA today cannot achieve his 27.2% field goal shooting rate. And there is Charles Barkley, who has the worst three-point shooting percentage in the history of the NBA, minimum 2,000 attempts, 26.6%. In fact, there have been players with less than 10% three-point shooting, but it was likely because they only attempted a few times over a season. But Charles Barkley is the worst three-point shooter in NBA history, with at least 2,000 shots, which is a lot. He just had a mid-range game, and his range was fairly constrained. Barkley intended to control the post, and he succeeded admirably in doing so. According to Charles Barkley, one of the greatest power forwards to ever play the game, he will not enjoy being the poorest three-point shooter in the history of the NBA. Next is the most time spent without a point was 28 minutes and 46 seconds by Joel Anthony, 2010-2011. Greetings from Club Trillion. As much as it might seem like a pricey nightclub, Club Trillion is really a nickname that former Ohio State walk-on Mark Titus came up with to describe when a player substitutes into a game but doesn't record any statistics at all, causing their box score to read 1 minute played followed by a series of zeros. The amount of playing time doesn't actually have to be 1 minute, it just helps with the catchy name. Joel Anthony was the man who had the unpleasant privilege of being named this club's president. LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh all took shots for the Miami Heat in the 2010-2011 season, which resulted in tons of offense. Joel Anthony only needed to be tall and rebound the ball. Nothing else was required of him. He made it painfully evident that scoring wasn't even close to being on his list of priorities, as he went over 28 minutes of play without recording a single point. Anthony had virtually no opportunities to score and served mostly to support James, Wade, and Bosh's offensive efforts in the paint. It is truly amazing that Joel Anthony went for nearly 30 minutes without scoring a point, but it did happen. We have presented you with some of the worst records in the history of the NBA. I bet that you were even shocked at some some of the records, but the truth is, it really happened. We look forward to players who will break these records. Subscribe and like. We'll see you in the next video.